Hello, everyone. It's your girl Miracle Sims, and you are watching God, Sex, and Love Live. I am here with Mr. Jake Doberenz. He is an author. He's also a podcast host and an entrepreneur. And I love that his website says and a thousand other things. Hi, Mr. Jake. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Miracle.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. Thank you for not being scared of the name.
Yeah, no fear here, right?
Well, yes, welcome to God, Sex, and Love. I know that you wanted to talk about your book, Who We Are. So I'm would love to listen to any and all things you want to share with us today. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. J.
About myself, yeah. So I'm in Oklahoma City right now. Hailing from that part of the country. I I'm here with my wife Samantha, and we have a cat named Simon. And
Oh,
I actually live on the campus of Oklahoma Christian University. I am a dorm director here. In addition to all those other things, right? So one of
right.
the hats that I wear, dorm director or dorm dad, as some people call it. Um, yeah, so I'm just a creative kind of guy. So, I'm a writer of books and creator of podcasts, and I have some plays published. So I just like the diversity, I guess.
I get that. I get that. I have a lot of hats too. It's funny. I was
Yeah.
on Speaking Grace TV recently, and they were going over my bio, and they just kept going and going. I'm like, I said,
Yeah.
can we get narrow some of it down? You don't have to read the whole
Yeah.
Um, and I had to just make it clear. I'm like, okay, this is a 35-year, process of all the things. It's not like I'm doing everything at this moment, but it was
Yeah.
just funny. And we have something in common a little bit. I was an RA on campus in
Okay.
college.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Really cool, really cool. So, yeah, I know you have a podcast, which I actually want to talk to you too, because I think I've seen some posts of yours, and I was debating about it. But let me we'll talk. We'll talk.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, no pressure about what's going on now. But anyway, I know you have your podcast and your books and everything like that. So where would you like to start? Like, how did you get into this journey of all of these things? The entrepreneurship part, the authorship, all the things that you got going on.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I've always kind of been creative. My brother and I playing with action figures,
Mhm.
making movies and stories. I've always kind of had that, but somewhere along the line, I had my on fire for Jesus years
Mm.
where I just kind of decided that um, I wanted to kind of go the ministry route, and then that sort of morphed into I wanted to be a Bible professor. So I was going to kind of go down that heady academic route.
Mhm.
Um, and I have a bachelor's degree in Bible, and then I got a master's degree in Bible last year. So that was sort of my route. But last year, January 2020, I sort of had yeah, before everything else was on the horizon there, but um
Mhm.
sometime there I just sort of had this revelation, like I'm sort of ignoring the sort of creative part of me.
Mm.
Um it's not that you can't get creative in teaching. In fact, that's probably a good thing. But I
Okay.
wanted to kind of do something where I could sort of flex my different muscles.
Mhm.
So I started my company, Theophany Media. I started really getting into writing and exploring all that kind of stuff, bringing some of those stories from the past back to the present, realizing they were terrible and rewriting them. And so I really just sort of embraced my creativity,
Mhm.
um, really just early 2020s. So not too long, although I've always sort of been creative. There's sort of this moment where I decided to embrace it all.
Mhm. I love that. I love that actually, and that was one of the things I wanted to get into with you as well. That I noticed you're very specific about creating faith content. And I do feel like that is an area that need. I mean, I know that there's stuff out there. Not saying that but I do feel like there's a need there, especially when it comes to content that is, as they say, that people can relate to. You know, and I noticed that about your site as well, that you were, well, one of the things you mentioned is like bringing humor in and whatnot. Which, I mean, God is very. I feel like he's very funny. I mean, I know there's plenty of times that I'm looking up at him
Yeah.
like, okay, we had this whole thing. I'm laughing, he's probably laughing at me, and it's one of those things. So I think, yeah, I think more faith Christian content is definitely important. So you said that I know you have plays, your podcast, and you're kind of doing all of those things right now, or is there other things too?
So so last year I started my podcast, The Bible But Funnier, but
Mm,
that's kind of fizzled out now. And
mm,
I've been more taking a backseat role on the podcast Creatively Christian. So
mm,
other people host Creatively Christian. I'm just sort of in the background. So things have kind of come and gone. Um, I usually get to a cross in the road where I'm like, wait a second, I have 4 million things to do. Something has to drop here.
mm,
Unfortunately, I let myself get to that too often. Um,
mm,
but, but yeah, so the podcast thing, I'm gonna start a new podcast. That's a more informational one. Um, that is gonna be about the times where humor and faith intersect. I'm kind of leaning into that. That's sort of my
mm,
brand. That's my bread and butter right there.
mm,
Um, but as you mentioned, I'm just really interested in that particular things about faith and that faith content kind of angle. Nothing
mm,
wrong with something never mentioning Jesus. It can still be a great, powerful story or piece of art.
right.
But I'm called, I feel like, to mostly just talk to Christians and say, here's how we can do better. Um,
Mm, mm,
and so I do part-time church ministry, but I feel like this is a kind of ministry too,
yeah.
to share stories and to have fun and to create art, and that's all ministry as well. And I'm primarily doing ministry for Christians, where there are other
Mm-hmm.
ways to do that kind of thing.
I totally, I'm like right here with you. I totally understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, again, I've shared my journey here on GSL so many times. I know people that watch, they're like, which, how do you tell your testimony? Uh, but I got to tell you, because, we're just not talking, right? So
Right.
long story short, I won't get all into it, but basically, that was kind of like the same similar type of inspiration for GSL, because, I get that, you know, it just, for whatever reason, it just seems like a lot of the times these topics that people can relate to, we take God out of it, right? So when it comes to sex and love and all these different things, for example, people don't necessarily think about God. They don't necessarily put the two together or whatever. And it's like, well, God created it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, he had a, plan for it and all that. You know what I mean? But that's another conversation. But I think I can relate to what you're saying in regards to creating content for Christians, because that was the other thing too. I feel like, I mean, obviously, I'm willing to talk to anybody, right? If anybody wants to come on here and share
Mhm.
and whatever the case is, But for the most part, what I noticed was that the Christian voice was being suppressed in a way, and still is. I mean, but and so what I wanted to do with GSL was to provide a place where Christians just could be open, not be open, honest, transparent about anything, including
Yeah.
including the title, but anything, period. And so, I think, and that's the interesting thing, because sometimes you get that feedback where it's like, I guess non-believers or some people want to, even some other believers too, they want to question it or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, when I'm creating content or when I'm putting things out here for other believers, I do expect you to know the Bible at least. So, you know what I mean? So if I'm talking about something biblical and you're coming against it, it's like, but you're saying you're a believer. So it's like, you know. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
It's interesting conversations that we've had a lot of different conversations here on GSL, but I guess I say all that to say is, like, I definitely can understand, like, creating content for Christians, yes, but I mean, I feel it's for everybody too. Like, if it reaches the other people as well, cool, come on in,
That's right.
but
Right.
I am specifically creating this, like, so I get it, I get what you're saying. Because we need that,
Right.
outlet. And yeah, we need to see other, like, I think that was the thing too about when I started GSL. It was just one of those things where it was like, okay, we're human too. You know what I mean? I'm not going to act like I'm perfect. I'm not going to act like I did everything right in my life and things like that. And I'm thinking that that's at least the people that I've had on here, especially when we've had panel discussions and things like that. I feel like that has really, people can appreciate that. I feel like the people that come on and we talk and all these different things, I think people have appreciated that thus far. And so I'm sure same for yours when it comes to all the content that you create. So I'm excited. I'm excited for all the things you have going on. And yeah, I mean, I don't know that. So I know you want to talk about your book. I know you want to talk about your book. You
I'll
did
talk
mention
about
something about
whatever.
movies. You mentioned something. Are you creating movies and whatnot as well?
No,
Yeah.
theater scripts. That's
Theater
I've
scripts.
created some of that. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's my background too. Yep. I went to school for theater. So okay, that's
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So and they're faith-based as well.
Um. The two ones that I've actually published and are being sold are not faith based.
Okay.
They're just general comedies. But
Ooh,
I have a couple faith based plays that I've entered in a contest, and
ooh,
one of them got first place, another one third place, another year. Um,
hmm,
so those are not, you know, uh, on any kind of database where other people can do them right now.
okay.
Um, but those are more faith based ones. So I have a little bit of a mix. So one of my
Cool. Well,
faith based
congrats.
ones.
Congrats on your awards there.
Yeah, thank you. The one that won first place was a comedic retelling of Ezekiel, um,
Mm,
done sort of like as if Ezekiel was auditioning for this theatrical role. So the play is called
oh,
Prophetic Theater. Um, so he's auditioning, and God is the director. And if you know the book of Ezekiel, Ezekiel does some like weird stuff. He's laying on his side for like 2 years, and
mm,
so this guy's like freaking out, like, what role did I just accept? And so it kind of takes that. So I like
that,
to I like to do fun stuff like that, and especially with the
yeah.
Bible. Um,
Mm,
you talked about it a little bit, but biblical illiteracy is a big thing. People don't know what's in the Bible. So I always like to
mhm.
find fresh ways to talk about that and then talk about the lessons. So plays are one of the things I
Um,
do. Yeah.
that I love that. I really do love that. I mean, that's been something that it comes across my mind every now and then, especially when I read. And like for example, I say one of my favorite biblical figures is Elijah, and I could just like as I was reading that section, because I went on this venture to read the entire Bible a few years ago, and so as I was reading that then, I just could really just imagine like the people like him with the other people and being like, okay, well, go ahead, try your thing with your God. I'll
Hmm.
wait. I can just imagine like in just real the way we talk, just that conversation and to me it's funny. I mean,
It is.
um,
I mean, it's supposed to
you
be
know,
funny, I think.
yeah.
So yeah, if you're laughing, you're getting the point.
Yeah, like it's just really one of those things. Like, all right, there's like, oh, is your God sleeping? What's going on with your God? What happened? Like, okay, well, let me do my thing now. So I don't
Exactly.
know. And
Yeah.
then and then even some of the stuff that Jesus said, and I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but I still just find the funny part of it because I just imagine, for example, like him talking to the disciples, like, man, how long do I have to be with y'all? Like, I've been with y'all, like, how long? We still talking about the same thing, like, the
Yeah.
faith, like, you know what I mean? Like, I could just imagine
Yeah.
um it being said in a comedic way, and I don't know. We got to do something with that one day. Look, me or you, I don't know, but I
There
feel
you
like that's
go.
hilarious
Yeah.
to me. So I love that. I love that you create content centered around that. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem.
When we talk about acting and whatnot, I'm all like, yeah, I get it. It's my background there. So
Hmm.
tell me about who we are. Tell me about this book, Who We Are.
Yeah. So my book, Who We Are. Let's see. Here we go.
Yeah, there it is.
Um,
Okay.
it's sort of my first experiment in traditional publishing. Um, And it was actually based off of a college class I did. I taught a college class for a church. I
Mhm.
was doing the college ministry thing for a bit. And, as I was trying to figure out what do college kids need, identity kept being this one that popped up.
Mm.
And identity is kind of a trendy thing.
Oh
Everybody's
yeah.
trying to find theirs, sometimes lose theirs.
Mhm.
There's a lot of buzz about identity. So
Mhm.
I taught a class on it, and that class became kind of the foundation of the book. And the basic sort of setup is I look at 7 identities that the typical, American Christian might kind of put on, but is not a good identity to have. Some of those are just flat out like wrong. Some of them are more like we got to talk about priorities here. Um,
Mm.
and I think that's a big one with identities. Um, this notion of like being yourself, which I have a lot of thoughts about that phrase, but sometimes we kind of bring to the surface things about our identity and say, this is the most important. My most important thing is my family or my happiness, or, I like the Marvel movies way over here or something like that. We have those as the top of our identities, and those are not necessarily bad. It's just let's get our priorities in straight. So
Yeah.
each chapter goes through 7 identities that we tend to go toward that maybe aren't great, and then each one is replaced by a Christian version of that, a Christian
Mm.
calling. So,
Okay. Nice.
the first chapter's sin. Sometimes we over identify with our sinful nature. Again, not wrong, but if we over identify with it, we got a problem. So that's replaced
Mhm.
by grace. Grace is what we
Mhm.
should really be identifying with. And
Mhm.
there's a chapter on sexuality. We
Mhm.
can unhealthily prioritize our sexuality or our sexual desire.
Mhm.
When in that chapter, I actually argue that a better focus is on healthy relationships. It's not about what can I get sexually, but
Mhm.
how can I create relationships with others
Yeah.
um, that are healthy and good and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the format of the book, and that's what I try to kind of explore specifically for younger people. But hey, I've had people of all ages read it and get something out of it.
That's awesome. I'm sure. I'm sure. And yeah, man, congratulations on your book and things as well. That's
Thank you.
awesome. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you went into depth with all 7 of your topics that you are exploring in there. But even as you was talking, I was like, I know you're dealing with the college kids, and I know that's like, I mean, well, maybe I don't know. I don't know if you guys have as much drama at your school that you're at. But it's just one of those things that I hear about. I try to think back on my college days to think like, was it so political, or were things so like, and like I don't remember it being this place where I was. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about like all the indoctrination and all the different things that are going on now, and it's just like, and then yeah, people are questioning identity. Right? They are lost in that
Hmm.
aspect, and so I was kind of wondering like, um, again, I know that you're at a Christian school, so I don't know what would you say about the students that you're seeing and that you are interacting with, like.
Yeah. So I have my dorm is mostly freshmen with some sophomores.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we're getting people that are just coming in, um, fresh faces. A lot of them just had a really weird senior year thanks to COVID. And so things are a little bit different for them. And I
Mhm.
was in their position 5 or 6 years ago. I was a freshman in college, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and definitely a lot seems to have changed in that relatively short amount of time. Um,
Mhm.
and I think there's a lot of confusion just in their own lives.
Mhm.
They're being taught by 100 different sources as they scroll through, Instagram on any given day or something.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting. There's definitely some positives about how open they are to certain things. Mental illness is talked about a lot more.
Mhm.
It's not as scary and taboo as topic as it once was. Um,
Mhm.
but it's certainly interesting. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I have depression." And
Oh,
it's a very different kind of vibe than
yeah.
when I was in college. So there's
Yeah.
some openness, but then
Mhm.
there. I was just talking with a student the other day, and we observed like people will talk about their mental health struggles all the time, but
Mhm.
spirituality is different. Um,
Mhm.
what used to be mental health taboo is now not as taboo. There's still difficulties, whereas
Yeah.
spirituality used to be, and you could talk about it no problem. But now
Right.
faith and stuff is just a little harder to talk about because you don't know where people are coming from, and I
Right.
don't know, people aren't as open about the questions or the things they've heard in that. So it's
Mhm.
it's really fascinating to me how
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
works
I'm
out.
sure. Yeah, that's why I was sitting here thinking, like, I'm sure it is because even though, again, I understand that you're at a specific, college that, I'm sure is centered around being Bible based and whatnot, but
Hmm.
um, you just get so many different types of people, and so you just never know, again, where people come from, and then as well as like, how they're feeling about whatever, So I just I can't even imagine like with everything that I'm hearing. And obviously, I have a son; he's 2, so I haven't gotten into the whole school thing yet.
Yeah, well,
But, but from what I'm understanding about what's going on in schools these days, from the grade schools to the colleges as well, it's just it makes me think back and being like, what happened? Like, I don't remember all of this stuff being issues,
mm,
and so I mean, but thank God for people like you and the other people that are, there to talk to the students and work with them and whatnot. I mean, obviously faith-based colleges and whatnot like that is important
yeah.
um, as well. Did you said you went to, did you go to a faith-based college your entire experience, or did it just a certain part?
So, I was in before college. I was in public school full
Okay.
time, in a place that wasn't necessarily very predominantly Christian. I'm from Oregon, the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, just very different demographics. Now I'm in the Bible Belt, so it's weird. It's like
Yeah,
flipped. Now the
yeah.
majority is more Christian. Um, but then for my bachelor's and master's, I was here at the school I'm at now, Oklahoma Christian University. So I
Okay.
did get the Christian education
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that
See,
part.
I did. I mean, well, I don't know. I just went to well, now it was like a 2-year school then, and then I guess now it's 4-year school, and it wasn't. I don't recall it. It wasn't like Christian, It just was like not say trade school. It was a school, like it was,
Yeah.
uh, you know. But I mean, I found that interesting too. I've looked over like online courses and whatnot over the years, and kind of looked at it like, I wonder what it would have been like to have gone to a faith-based school, something like that, or maybe a full-on performing arts school, or just all that type of stuff I've debated about over the years. But yeah, I just think it's interesting, yeah, that perspective. So,
Hmm.
so you decided back then that um that's what you wanted to do because I know you said that was your strong, I guess, when you were getting into the faith. Then like when would you say that you built your own relationship with Christ?
Yeah. So it started for me as a kid learning about apologetics and Christian
Mm.
evidences, and I was like, everybody else must be so dumb; they don't see this. And I was pretty self righteous. I'm not. I was. It was not a great. I was not a great person in
Oh,
my younger years because I was a really passionate kid who thought he knew everything and thought everybody else didn't know anything, and that's not a great, not a
mhm.
good thing. But when you're the kid who's kind of interested in the Bible a little bit more, you kind of get pushed to the front in leadership opportunities, and so I got those things. I could speak in front of church, um, and I really appreciated those. I'm really blessed to have those opportunities. So I was kind of going that path. But for a while, it was my relationship with God was a lot more intellectual.
Mm.
Um, I knew God, I knew what the Bible said, I knew all the stuff, but there wasn't that feeling component. And part of it's
Yeah.
just the tradition I was raised in, we didn't
Mhm.
emphasize the feelings and stuff because
Mhm.
feelings change and feelings are icky and so I just like, well, I must be fine because I'm doing what I'm saying and
Mhm.
so but at college, which is of course a time that is more intellectually focused, ironically taught me the value of that actual relationship with God, not just that knowledge of God.
Mhm.
And so some of the intellectual stuff had to go, and specifically
Mhm.
the I'm smarter than everybody else attitude. And as that relationship developed, I think I got into a better place.
Yeah.
And then as I've sort of decided to explore my creative side, specifically exploring it for God, I think that has helped a lot. Actually, I was just at a seminar today, and the speaker he was talking about he used this phrase like uh, playing with God, having playtime with God as a component in relationships, and he used this metaphor like I don't have kids, but if you're a parent, you don't just spend every second instructing or something. You also have playtime. You also just hang out, and you talked
Yeah.
about hanging out with God. And I think through
Mhm.
my creativity is something where I've been able to build that relationship because I've been able to just hang out with God. I've been able to just
Yeah.
have fun and be creative with God. And we have those
Mhm.
moments, not just,
Mhm.
um, God, what are the rules today or something like that.
Right. And I think that's what he wants, right? I think that at the end of the day, that's what he wants from all of us and with all of us. Um, but for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, but there just seems to be this disconnect. And I know I talk about it all the time. I do this daily inspiration or whatever, and through that journey, I've been, taking time every day to Bible study and whatnot. And the more I read, the more I'm like, why don't we live like this? Like, what? This is just so like, why don't we do this stuff? Like, because this is
Yeah.
just it's great. It's like, okay, so and a lot more makes sense. The more I read and the more I study and everything like that, I start to get, that better understanding of like, maybe who God is, and even coming across the verses where it's talking about that where he sings over us and all these different things. Like you don't hear that about God though. You only hear
Mm,
about the
mm,
judgment and all this stuff. And it's like which people take so much issue with, which where that's a whole nother topic. Um, but I just go on and on about like that type of stuff. But yeah, it's just very interesting to again get that those relationship moments with God is very important. I think we need to get hopefully a better understanding of God to understand that you know this is his desire at the end of the day. And but there's a disconnect there though. Like there really is. And both I would say both in believers as well as with the unbelievers as well. There's still some disconnect where it's like
hmm
um for me it kind of seems like we're still struggling with the basics of if he is this, or if Jesus came and all this. And it's like, okay, well, here's the thing, like Jesus, I feel like Jesus is the thing that it separates all other things. Because the things he taught, what he said, he's like, I'm the only way. Like that knocks out everything else,
mm.
and it's just one of those things that I guess we all have our own journeys and whatnot. But I don't know. Like, so I I know you say you teach as well, but so at the college you're more so the director in the dorm, right? You're not necessarily a teacher per se.
Right. I'm not on the faculty. I teach at
Okay.
church. I
Okay.
teach at church, and right now I'm doing an adult class, so that's where I get my
Mm.
teaching in.
Got you, got you. I guess the reason I asked is like, do you all get into? I mean, I know you got the apologetics background, so I don't know. Do you get into these type of debates with people, or where people want to like do the whole meeting of the minds and discuss this type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I a lot of these students are Christian. I don't know that belief in God is necessarily the issue. Um, a lot of times it comes more to like the ethics of things, the how to live, where there are questions, and
Mm-hmm.
so I try not to get into too many debates, specifically with my students, but we've been able to
Yeah,
have discussions.
yeah.
I listen until I truly understand what they're trying to say, and then I
Mm,
try to interject. But for a lot of these young Christian students, um, if they have questions about like, why is the church sometimes terrible to people, and what's with all this hypocrisy, and why does God
mm.
care about what I do in the bedroom? And those are the kind of questions that I hear more often than, I don't know, did God exist or whatever. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And all of those, man, all of those are definitely but it's real life though, and I think that's the good thing about it's I feel like it's okay to ask those questions, it's okay
it
to.
is okay, right?
Yeah, because then you get the understanding, right? That's
Mhm.
what part of getting the wisdom from God and everything like that. And so I think it's great that they're asking those questions, and hopefully, I mean, I'm sure you're guiding them in the right direction. But also hopefully they're taking out the time themselves to read what the word is saying and get that, revelation, amongst themselves too. It's just one of those things. Well, I'm glad, yeah, I'm glad that none of the dorm people are questioning God. I mean, at least you don't have that part, because like I said, it gets really interesting when it comes to people that watch or people that like listen to your podcast or whatever. It's like, but then sometimes it'll be believers too, and that's the thing that kind of confuses me. Like, how are
Mm.
we so confused about something like some of this stuff we shouldn't be confused about? Like,
Yeah,
so
you'd think, but
man, well, I don't want to be long in the conversation. I mean, when you say that, you was like, okay, I'm gonna be on God, sex, and love. In your mind, like, what were you thinking? Like, okay, I want to definitely make sure I talk about something. What was that thing?
I I am always just here to serve you and whatever direction you want to go, and your audience. So I
Yeah,
didn't have any things I had to say. I did
yeah.
think we'd talk a little bit more about sex and that kind of whole stuff. Um, but it's okay that we didn't necessarily go down that. But that being the title, I was a little bit nervous because
Ah,
that's an interesting topic. So
it is, and it can get touchy and stuff like that. I mean, and that's the thing. Again, that's why I made my joke earlier, because it's like, oh, you weren't scared to come.
yeah,
It's because I literally just had somebody today make a response, and I was just so confused because they felt like it wasn't like the show didn't fit their topic. But I'm like, but how could your topic happen without that?
mm,
But anyway, not trying to call nobody out or whatever. But no, I mean, well, GSO, we talk about everything though. We talk about, yeah, I say God, sex, and love, and everything in between. So I mean, yeah, I've had just regular conversations. We don't have to go there unless you want to,
yeah,
because I know you
no,
mentioned that your book. You mentioned that something about that in your book. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and share with us that part or not. But yeah, the show's not all. It's just not all about sex. I just want to
yeah,
make it not
fair
as
enough.
taboo, 'cause I feel like it shouldn't be as
Okay,
taboo as it is in the Christian
yeah.
community. Because I feel like we need to talk about
Mhm.
these things. But anyway, sorry. You you were
Uh,
gonna tell me about your book, or?
yeah. I mean, I can go into more about that chapter. It's so my book isn't meant to be the last word on everything or the most comprehensive on anything. It's where do I put it? It's relatively short.
Yeah.
Um, but on that chapter, I think, and I've happened in grad school for some reason. I ended up writing several papers specifically on what Paul has to say about sexuality and stuff, and he has some things to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really, just the big takeaway for me um, is something that many people in our society don't want to recognize, and that's sex or sexuality isn't just a you thing or between you and your partner. Because at least how I'm reading Paul, what I think he thinks, you know, God wants is like your sexuality sort of affects the community somehow. It
Yeah.
it affects everybody here and affects your relationship with God, and it's a spiritual thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
in First Corinthians 6 with the Corinthians, real interesting people, and Paul gets on their case is that you're affecting the body, and sometimes he seems to be talking about your actual physical body, other times it's the church body.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the big thing in that chapter that I wanted people to understand,
Yeah.
is it's not just about God making rules randomly because he's a cosmic killjoy. Um, and in fact, I think there is a lot of freedom in the self control that we have to exercise. There's
Yeah.
freedom in not being controlled by the bondage of sin and
Yeah.
just going in the direction of whatever our hormones have to say. Like, there's freedom in being against that. And I
Yeah.
think that's sort of the major takeaways of that chapter, just so we can get that sex talk in there.
Yeah, man, I get it. I totally get it. And it's like, like you were saying, even so, that freedom that you get from that self-control. I mean, people don't understand that, but it's like, you don't have to go with every impulse, right? You don't have to go on your every thought. Like, you can have some self-control. Like, oh man, this sorry, I'm tired. But I just feel like there's just so many things that, God has given us dominion of that we don't exercise. And that's the problem. Well, one of the problems when it comes to that conversation, as well as everything else, because people don't see how their relationship can affect the body. But at the end of the day, people are complaining about the broken homes. People are complaining about the marriages that are failing. People are you know what I mean? Like, and you see all these examples around of what this looks like without God. So it's
Mm.
like, I mean, how about we try to do it God's way then? You know what I mean? Because I think it's very clear his intentions for, us in general, but that as well. That it's like, I mean, I just know for me, and this is I'm not struggling with. So that's the joke. That's the little joke behind GSL, because those are things that I thought about like all the time, and I was trying to find balance with it. It was like, what am I supposed to do? Especially when I was single, I was like, what am
Mm.
I supposed to do with all this? And stuff, and going through my own journey of figuring that out or whatever, and finding balance with that. But yeah, man, I just wish we would just again do more what the word say to do, and to understand that we have much more control than we how can I say it, we have more, the only way I could think of to say it right now is control, but we can have more control than we realize, and that's the
Yes,
interesting
yes.
thing about these conversations. Yeah, because sometimes people don't think that, right? They feel I have no control over my mind. I have no control over my thoughts. I have no control over my body. I don't have. I'm like,
Hmm.
why do you believe that?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Jake, I just really thank you so much for joining me on this evening. I thank you for sharing about your book. I see that your website is right there. So, friends, if you're interested in his book or any of the content that he is creating, go to his website that is featured right there next to his name, jakedoberenz.com.
Hmm.
And I'll let you have the final word here.
Final word. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Thank you, Miracle, for letting me come on and chat with you about all sorts of stuff. It was very fun. Um, my final word, I guess I'll give a word of encouragement. Um, following God um, can be creative. It can be playful. Embrace those sides of you. That's not opposed. It's not opposed to God. God's a creator. We are creators. So get creative, I suppose.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Jake. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All righty. That's God Sex and Love Live, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Good night.